Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome you and actually commend you for getting up early on Saturday morning and joining us for a special, technically site event session, but being in this wonderful hall, I think the importance of our topic is quite obvious. The name of our session is Women and Resilience in Leadership across Armed Forces, Peacebuilding, and Post-Conflict Reconstruction. So the title already is quite packed. We have top-notch thought provokers with us today. And we have less than 1 hour at this point, 56 minutes now officially. And because we have this wonderful array of expertise in different fields, but connecting us in talking about women in leadership, their resilience, but also the shortcomings that we're observing and the improvements that we need to work on in a more actionable and practical ways. I will not waste too much time. My name is Vladislava Gubalova. I'm a senior fellow at GlobSec, as well as I lead the GlobSec See Her initiative. I will shamelessly promote our latest report, which is on women in defense on the eastern flank. And actually the lead author is one of the main organizers of this conference. So thank you to the organizers for giving the floor for us to discuss the topic on women and leadership in the 3 different domains: armed forces, within the peacebuilding domain, and post-conflict reconstruction. So very quick introductions, and we will gonna straight dive in to some of the initial thoughts of our presenters. First, to my left, is Major General Kaspars Pudāns. He is the Chief of Defense of the Republic of Latvia, and he has more than 25 years of military experience and service. And your motto, sir, is "My Latvia, my responsibility." So starting with very high level of accountability and personal responsibility, which we highly appreciate. Then we have Commander Shannon-Lewis Simpson. And Commander Lewis Simpson is the Deputy Director of Women, Peace and Security Analysis and Guidance Team, part of the Directorate for Gender Equality and Intersectional Analysis, and this is within the frame of the Department of National Defense of Canada. Welcome. Then we have Dr. Patricia Chica Morales. She is an assistant professor at the East Asian Department at the University of Malaga, and your field of research in gender policies in international aid and expertise in Korean studies. With us today as well is Attorney Sharon Zagagi-Pinhas, former chief military prosecutor of the Israel Defense Forces, more than 24 years of service. And very important, and today where we're gonna dive in and speak about, she's also a founding member of the DINA project, working on recognition and justice for the victims of sexual violence in the 7 of October attacks. And then we do have Ms. Gorica Bauta. Ms. Gorica Bauta is the gender advisor to the European Union Advisory Mission in Ukraine. And she herself as well has a very vast experience in fragile conflict and post-conflict regions. So as you can see already, the experience is vast and the topic is extremely timely and important. And you know, we should be celebrating a very important anniversary this year. It is the 25th anniversary since the adoption of the UN Resolution 1325. But I think that the mood is somewhat somber. We have already discussed the past 2 days here in Riga that indeed peace is not assured. Security is not guaranteed. And to bring a different layer or additional layer is that inclusion and equality narratives globally actually are shifting, and they are shifting in treacherous and dangerous direction, I would say. we know that, and we see that women are more visible, and they are spreading their competencies and their leadership in a multitude of areas. And this can be from the active military service, from building communities and resilience in the communities, from strengthening justice as well. But this is not a given. This is not something that we just see and it's guaranteed for us. But I think that our security will be stronger if it is in the hands of both women and men. Our peace will be more enduring if it is both in the hands of women and men. So while I think we need to highlight the bright spots and the accomplishments, perhaps we also need to think and today have an honest conversation about the practical actions and the next improvements to close gaps and to mitigate shortcomings. So as I took plenty of time, from the little time that we have, nevertheless. Let's start right away. Major General Pudāns, tell us a little bit about the state of play and women's leadership here in Latvia.
Yeah. Okay, good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure being invited in this panel. I'm very honored. And on your question, indeed, I would start in overall in Latvia. You might know, and if not, then you will learn that we have chosen, of course, mainstreaming policy of planning on equality of gender into our all state sectors. And the defense sector is one of them. But at the same time, armed forces, part of defense sector, of course, has to take into account something different in overall armed force, all armed force, what we can see. It's something tied with a traditional approach. For us particularly, it's also that we have been building our defense force, armed force, only for more than 30 years, so some legacy onto this and so on. Because armed force is the traditional systems which are mainly based on achievements throughout careers and so on. This has to be taken into account. It changes and it gives opportunities, in particular in our forces. There's no policies or regulations which restricts or limits somehow the gender equality, but at the same time I would say that it's directly also promotes, like directly saying quotas or something like this. This is still based on achievements, evaluations, and equal promotion of these positions. But there are, of course, the factual approach. If you look at the facts, I would start from historical. As I said, armed forces, 30 years building, and mainly our armed force, how it was built. Some part was built on our experience, how we started with our volunteers who became part of our National Guard defending freedom in 1990 with the barricades and so on. And you can see that, well, this is all what's happened. You already seen in the streets 34 years ago that, well, this was different amount of males and females who approached and selected to go voluntary in protecting them. And most of them, of course, joined these voluntary troops or National Guard in a later stage. And at the same time, another part what armed forces started to build, the leadership, particular officers and so on, of course, was those who've been trained in and had experience from a Soviet times, from Soviet army. And then, of course, this was mainly, I would say, almost fully male contingent of officers who started to build our armed force. And you should understand the leaders who are currently here, as myself, for example. We just started this 30 years ago. So the leadership positions we have now started 30 years ago. So the recruitment at that time have impact on what we have in leadership positions. But still, looking back to these examples, in overall, if I look in our armed forces, around 20%, so every fifth is female in our ranks. But there is difference between voluntary services, both in National Guard, in reserve application to potential voluntary training to become a reserve soldier is higher. It's above these 20%. But in regular forces, and particularly lately in our state service sort of conscription, what we renovated 3 years ago, it's still very low application voluntary onto this. So this is sort of more demonstrates it's more the females chooses to be responsible their responsibility of being in defense, but only in an option where you're not committed full-time. So not full service, not full career approach, but that you have this knowledge being part of defense, but as an optional readiness into this. Looking at examples at higher leadership, also some observation what I have, not based on a study, but it came up in preparation for this panel, what I looked in armed forces. Yes, this fifth of females in overall structure is not represented in higher level of units, starting, for example, in unit command, battalions and higher, and of course, it could be only maybe 5%. But at the same time, if I look in our staffs, particularly our general staff, in some main positions and main functions, for main 6-7 functions, it's like 50-50, which makes me to think that it's sort of, we see the capacity of females in a leadership probably with different approach. You know that leadership mainly divides in leading people and leading institution. I sort of tend seeing this more approach that the females are more capable and more advancing and achieving into leading institution. But that also pays on this difference once you reaching the higher levels, because you always in armed forces start with leading people. And that's where we see still, of course, more the approach or on female officers, female NCOs, or male officers, male NCOs in leading people. And this probably limits to the growth in the positions. But at the same time, it's here, and I think this is also will be and is supported from us giving this equality or that approach through that achievement positions, because I see your topic is resilience, and of course, as it's everywhere else, as I yesterday here spoke more about resilience of our infrastructure, and one point of this resilience is diversity, and same is here. With the leadership, resilience in leadership requires diversity, different perspectives, different views, and that's why I will be promoting, and we are promoting that, of course, as far advancing and encouraging also our female officers, NCOs stepping up and taking up these positions.
Thank you very much, Major General. I like how you framed it, that diversity is resilience, and resilience is diversity. So we certainly cannot. We have to be careful in framing our terminology. So when we are approaching, excuse me. So when we are actually not only planning and not only creating the strategic documents, we are actually knowing what is in there. And then moving forward maybe to Commander Louis Simpson, Canada has been a bright spot when it comes to the Women, Peace and Security agenda, and it is in its third national plan. Which we would very much like to hear about, but maybe as we are talking about the plan, tell us a little bit about the development, the innovation, maybe the change of paradigm approaching this third plan.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Honored to be here. Thank you, sir, for your remarks. And just coming from those remarks, we need to realize that there's a reason why the United Nations Security Council created, 1325, because gender inequity causes insecurity, and it's a security issue. Gender inequity is probably the most important indicator of worsening insecurity and conflict and crisis around the world, and differential effect of crisis and conflict across the globe. So we need to recognize that as being the foundation on which we can think about and conceptualize what we're talking about. So we look upon it in this way. We don't look upon 1325 as a box that nothing else can go in, but it's a floor, a foundation from which we consider emerging security issues, So that's where we're going with it. Essentially, we need to understand what systemic barriers exist as well to prevent half the population from being involved in security and defense. What wonderful stroke of genius it is for our adversaries to use our biases and stereotypes in our society to render half the population out of combat. That's ridiculous. We need every single person to bring themselves to the fight, or to address the problems of climate insecurity, of everything else that's happening in the world that causes people to be differentially affected. So that's where we are in Canada. We have 6 different foci within the CNAP 3, which is good until 2029. Building, sustaining peace, security, justice, and accountability, crisis response, sexual and gender-based violence, leadership, and inclusion. And all of those need to be tackled either at the institutional and the operational level. We know why we need to do this work, but a lot of people within our force don't know how. So the focus in the last year and a half or so has very much been on putting the practical from the policy and understanding the relevance of these concepts, of these considerations, of these risks and threats to the operational environment right down to the tactical level. So that's the space in which we occupy now. And that's the space where we occupy with the policy side as well, to ensure that the policies can start to break down these systemic barriers that we know exist and are historical in nature or based on cultural norms. So we need to break those down to ensure that everyone can bring their true selves to the fight. And that's very important. And that's all I want to say right now. And that's important for collective defense. We need every single person in society understanding their role in defense. How it is to be ready so they can be prepared and be resilient then when something happens. Either it be a forest fire, in the case in Canada, or a flood, or a tsunami, or whatever, or full-on conflict.
Thank you very much, and that builds nicely on Major General's remarks as well. But when you talked about exactly thinking about operationalization, going all to the knowledge and understanding of everybody knowing their role and be prepared. So it is, again, about resilience, about preparedness. And that needs to be built element by element. It cannot be just top-down, immediately thought. It has a more complexity to it. We'll come back and we're going to discuss a little bit more. In the sake of time, I will move to each of you. And next is Dr. Morales. Dr. Morales, let's slightly move as we talked about this different roles, that it is not only about participation in armed forces, it's also about building community, it's also about looking into justice elements. It is quite complex process. Maybe you can bring a little bit the angle of gender mainstreaming and its importance when we talk about international aid and cooperation in that sense.
Yes, actually, gender mainstreaming have been working for years in not only working on women, but also what are the social or the social structure that brings to this gender inequality. So when talking about post-conflict, international donors has a very important role to play. They kind of work by themselves and they also work with social and local actors, but they have some tools and thoughts about this gender mainstreaming application, which means not only to apply gender to these women policies, which are necessary after conflict, such as reparation of victims or gender-based violence, but also working on leadership, on women participation, on decision-making, on even climate change, working mainstreaming in all policies who could bring to a better gender equality. But this has a lot of challenges, and it requires, in the first point, to work with the social and the local NGOs and movement, and this is quite important because sometimes international donors work with their own mind, but they have to understand and adapt where they're working on. And also some challenges that are facing all countries, such as this improvement of anti-gender discourses. Also, and it is quite important to recognize that international donors, sometimes they don't have so much funding for things related to gender because they are considered only women issues, but they have to apply for all categories in all programs proposed. And also the training on gender equality, and this is super important because if you don't have this thought in men and women working on international cooperation and in post-conflict reconstruction, how can they apply. So gender education in this sense is quite important for all the society, but much more for these people who are working in this. So for this effective implementation of gender mainstreaming, we have to take care with all these things.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morales. You brought up another angle, and that is about this cooperation on the ground. And I think that's a very important operational angle as well, and a practical angle, because what the donors assume and presume, even with the best of intention and best of preparation, may not actually be applicable on the ground. And then I definitely would like to a little bit later come back on the training and education, because this applies not only here, but applies even from in having in fighting biases early on. It's also about education early on as well. So we can come back in a little bit onto that. But when we talk about on the ground, if I can bring in Sharon here as well. You were a founder of a very significant and interesting project, and it has a couple dimensions. It's not just about bringing justice and recognizing the crimes and the sexual violence crimes during the 7th of October attacks, but it's more. It's about changing narratives, being national and international, changing legal principles. And so if you could share a little bit about the line of work at the moment and how you see forward moving with the project.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me a chance to tell you a little bit about the DINA project. The DINA project was established after October 7, when we realized that there was sexual violence that occurred on October 7 in captivity. And the DINA project is based and established by women that are experts in laws and in gender. I was a prosecutor for 24 years. And last July, we published a book, like you showed everyone your report, and it's important for me to show you our book. It's called A Quest for Justice, October 7 and Beyond. And the beyond is exactly what you said about learning what we did. We did a research regarding the sexual violence on October 7. And we tried to learn from what happened on October 7 and in captivity, from the sexual violence to other arenas around the world, because conflict-related sexual violence was not something that was just perceived or invented in October 7. It is something that existed from the dawn of humanity. And the name of our project, the DINA project, is after Dinah, the biblical Dinah. Dinah is the daughter of Jacob from the Bible, that she was kidnapped and raped, and she did not have a voice. She's a symbol or requisite of voice, and we try to bring this voice. And although this is a phenomena that's existed for many, many years, and it happened in the last decades, it happened in the last months. There were reports of sexual violence in Sweden and Syria. There is sexual violence that is known to happen in Ukraine, in Rwanda, and in other places. And when we look backwards, you see that there are very little indictments, and there is very little accountability for those who committed the sexual violence. And as a prosecutor for 24 years, I thought that I knew and I prosecuted many cases of sexual violence, and I thought that I knew everything, because I prosecuted many cases. Now I'm also representing crime victims, and I know everything about it. And there was some point we started to work on the subject of recognition and denialism, which is also a phenomenon that is known regarding sexual violence, not just in October 7, but in other arenas. And then at some point we realized that there are many challenges that arise from the special, unique characteristics of conflict-related sexual violence, such as silencing of the victims, that most victims either die or are too traumatized to talk, the subject of proving the intent of the sexual violence, and also the subject of linking, because we're so used to the fact that the victims knows the perpetrators and can link him to the crime, and we face reality where we can't do it. And in our book, we map the challenge, but also trying to bring a roadmap on how to get accountability, how to get justice. And we're hoping that it can be a roadmap, not just in Israel, but in other places, other arenas around the world to get accountability. And we're hoping that other countries will adopt protocols in their countries, because in Israel, nobody thought that something like this can happen. And it can happen in other places around the world, and it has happened. So countries should also be prepared, and that is what we are offering in the book.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a tiny follow-up question, so we'll come back to everybody in a second. The topic continues to be somewhat stigmatized and taboo. In your advocacy work now, do you feel that that there is an opening? There's ears that would like to listen. Who are the listeners? Do you see progress in moving towards? Because you're offering a case study. You're offering solution, let's say, how to move forward with protocols so we can get accountability and justice. But do you have the ears of those that need to hear it?
First of all, I think that you're very right, because even people that realize that sexual violence has occurred do not want to hear about it. It's a very triggering subject. Mm-hmm. And every time that I lecture on the book or on the subject, I always give a trigger warning. And one of the major difficulties that we encountered in the beginning of our work regarding October 7, that there was denialism, that some people don't want to hear about it, and some people don't want to talk about the sexual violence, because if you want to depict yourself as freedom fighters, you can't say that there was sexual violence, because sexual violence is always unjustified, always out of it's not part of a conflict. It's never justified. But we're finding ourselves, when we're bringing the talk, that people do want to listen, and people realize it can happen in their countries, and people try to learn from it. So I'm finding it, even if, yesterday I went to a classroom of students, and it's a heavy subject to put on them, and they listened, and then afterwards, even though they looked a little bit shell-shocked because it's triggering, they asked very important questions, and they wanted to learn from it. So I find it that people, although it is difficult, do want to hear, but you have to knock on doors, you have to shout, you have to make your point. Otherwise, there is the initial barrier that people do not want to cross. But if you make them cross that barrier and listen, then I think it amplifies the messages.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So bring those voices. And Gorice, actually, Sharon did mention Ukraine in her presentation, and you are now on the ground in Ukraine. Could you share with us a little bit about some of the achievements in a very, very difficult time that you have observed, but also maybe also share with us your thoughts on moving forward. What are the important elements? What is still to be done? How to sustain the progress when we talk about women's leadership, women's resilience, incredible stories. Is it also a little bit about reform, institutionalization? Tell us a little bit.
Thank you, Vladislava, and thank you for having me here today. Over the past 10 years, Ukraine has made significant progress in advancing gender equality, including in the civilian security sector, in line with its international obligations. And those progress, I would say, that have become even more remarkable in the context of the current war. The country has ratified the Istanbul Convention. They continue to revise their legislation and undertake also institutional reforms to bring it closer to the EU and international standards. And allow me just here to underline that Ukraine is the only country that has amended its National Action Plan on UN Security Council Resolution 3025 in times of war. Mm-hmm. So the work is now also underway on a third national action plan, 3025, and I think that this is really impressive, right? So in the immediate aftermath of the full-scale invasion, although patriarchal norms deeply rooted in the society became also evident, but and those norms have long positioned women in the as caregivers. But in the years since, the women also stepped up, right, in men traditionally dominated sectors. And there is no doubt that the war has also exacerbated gender inequalities and vulnerabilities. We saw also the increase in gender-based violence, conflict-related sexual violence, and also an increased risk of human trafficking. And despite those progresses, also I will say that still the gender stereotypes continue to influence societal perception, but there are also encouraging signs, right, of progress and a growing consensus on equal pay for equal work, equal retention, retirement age, and all those aspects are basically creating the condition for a more inclusive and sustainable institutions, right? Looking ahead, I think that advancing gender-responsive civilian security sector reforms is really essential, and it's also timely. I think that this is why it's so important we already spoke about operationalization, right? But also I will add, about institutionalization of gender mainstreaming in the daily work and within the institutions. This is the only way that we can ensure sustainable progress, and that we can also ensure that those achievements made during the war will also stay in the post-war period. And on Wednesday, we had a session with our counterparts from the civilian security sector that are present also here today, and I'm so grateful, and my colleagues in the room. And I think that their message is very clear, right? When we're talking about resilience, there is no resilience without gender equality, and they together are contributing to the modernization of the security. And we must just put gender equality at the center of our security. The time is now, and security goes behind military strength, I believe. It's really about inclusion and equality. It has to be, it is, and it has to be a shared responsibility.
Thank you very much, Gorica. Bringing in exactly that the modernization of security is also about gender equality. It's an essential part of it. I know that some of you have been taking notes while each of the speakers have been presenting their remarks. I would like to actually open, and if you have a comment to some of the points, maybe we can do that to be a bit more interactive and inclusive. Shannon, I saw that you were taking a lot of notes. Maybe you can bring some of your thoughts.
That's because I forget everything. So I need to write things down. I'm struck by what people were mentioning about violence and the stigmatization of particularly CRSV. And we have to recognize, and I think it is recognized now, I hope, by most, is that conflict-related sexual violence is a weapon. We don't stigmatize a soldier for being shot. We shouldn't stigmatize him or her for being assaulted and violence given in this way. It's a weapon. And our adversaries know that. and they draw upon those stigmatizations, those negative stereotypes, particularly for men, but also women, that do exist, that cause people not to speak out and not to be reporting or not to talk about it. And that sort of burden renders people hors de combat, and it also carries a cycle of violence within society, which trickles down to the family, which trickles down to their unit, which trickles down to everything, which interferes with the integrity of a military unit, which interferes with the resilience of the community. It is an absolute scourge, and we need to be paying attention more to this, and more than just a woman's issue, because it isn't. It's a societal issue. It's as simple as that.
Thank you very much. Patricia, maybe I can bring you in for a minute, because you are an expert in Korean studies, South Korea. It's an interesting example. We are noticing that there is a change of narrative in the online space, for example, because Shannon brought community and society as a driving force for ensuring our security. Tell us a little bit, what are you observing in South Korea, and should we be concerned of what we see?
I think South Korean case is now very interesting in this gender debate, not because I study, but gender movement has been very strong in the country with now a lot of popularity within the young girls, but at the same moment we saw, like in the United States, an increase on this anti-gender discourse, and we can see it on the online media. They talk about even a gender fight, but it is not a gender fight. This is just a lot of young men very angry with feminism because they do not understand, and they are thought by the government or by the online world that the problem on the society is because of this woman advancement, which is of course totally untrue, but it's like a simple discourse to say what is happening in our society, we don't know about the problem, and they are using this anti-gender discourse. But the problem is that in the online world is increasing quite a lot, but at the same time, the gender discourse and women movement are increasing in the country. Even journalism is changing a little bit in the terms of how do they talk about gender violence news. So I think even we have these discourses, we can be positive in South Korea because changes are occurring. But these things are very slowly, so we have to wait, take care, and trust in this young feminist movement also in South Korea to see how it's going.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Patricia. Tagging a little bit on this online space and bringing it a little bit to this change of the battlefield almost towards digitalization. Major General, if I can bring you in, do you see that there is a potential for women's inclusion in leadership, considering that now we talk about the new defense technologies, the new way of warfare is conducted. Maybe it's not on the ground participation in the front lines, but maybe women's place can be seen in leadership in this other domain. And then additionally, you have a great experience with the National Guard of Latvia, and this is a flexible environment where perhaps for women that will be one avenue to really join the force and participate, but also to lead. Actually, I found a little survey on the National Guard, and in Latvia, I understand there are plans to increase the numbers of the participation within the National Guard, but the survey showed that I think only 2% of those asked said that they joined the National Guard, and 11% said that they considered it and would consider but haven't done so. But for example, there are others that 26% saying they don't have time or they have other reasons to do so. So we know that it's a complicated process, and it is a commitment, even if it's a voluntary and part-time, it's a serious commitment. But could those be the two areas where you would see improvement of participation of women and also improvement in leadership of women?
Yeah. I'll start with the second part of National Guard, which I had the honor to command. That's why I know. a bit on this. And as I said in my initial remarks, this is something we will see this more interest in joining and being part of defensive responsibility for the state. And this something we mostly encouraging. I wouldn't say this is particular that that part this gives more opportunities in different positions, but it's something we're encouraging everyone, saying that National Guard is your option of being responsible about our defense. That everyone, both in age, in gender, in hobbies, in experience, in knowledge, can find his place in National Guard. Even, of course, lately, last decade, National Guard became, due to the necessity of our defense requirements, became very militarized. Well, this is not how you could see probably somewhere else as a military, as this National Guard more as a policing force or enabling force or supporting. We have necessity, and that's what we invested the last years, and they become very much similar specialties and requirements in National Guard, same as in regular force. But still, this is somehow still encourages female also to join. As I said, it's more than 20% of females in overall National Guard. And this is what will be continuing. We will demonstrate these opportunities available, and that's encouraged. But exactly, that's what I had in my notes, probably 2 big letters, so you can read. Is new technologies is the future, which will give more opportunities, because it will bring more diverse units within our armed forces, more different approach how to lead the troops. So it's more through the digitalization, through modern platforms, and I think this will be more encouraging or supporting the advancement of also female leaders into positions. That's why that's something I also look at. It could be technology-enabled advancement of different leadership positions. Fully agree.
Thank you very much, Major General. Gorica, maybe if I can come to you once more. Being on the ground in Ukraine and working very, very closely with the civilian security sector, I think also we see the extreme speed and competency in innovation when in Ukraine due to obvious necessity. Tell us a little bit maybe of what is the European advisory missions in Ukraine tools of support of the sector, and do you also kind of cross with that innovation and this creative ways of handling, but at the same time building resilience? Maybe you can share some of your experiences.
Thank you, Vladislava. Yeah, I would say that our mission since basically since the time when it has been established has continued to support Ukrainian counterparts in their efforts basically advancing gender-responsive also institutional reforms, right, when it comes to the civilian security sector. So over the time, we supported by providing strategic advice. We also invested in the capacity building, supported our counterparts in that regard. Also in leadership capacity, and this is still something that I think that there is still room for improvements, because women in leadership positions still remain limited, I would say. Over the time, yes, I think that's perhaps the main part of our engagement with our counterparts through training, and now we are moving in the direction of more sustainable approach towards training of trainers, towards a more I would say more sustainable, right, approach and supporting them in their efforts to build up an inclusive civilian security sector. But you know, I want to use also the opportunity here to say that our work starts internally, so within our own mission. When we're talking about translating also policy into practice, right? This is really also the clear message from our head of mission, always saying, you know, when we're talking about gender equality, what is that when we have to move from discussion to concrete action, and the time is now to do it. So we have invested a lot internally in terms of building our own capacity, right, of our personnel, and also trying to kind of take efforts to create a more safe and inclusive working environment, and attract more female participation with different backgrounds. So so really, it's I will just echo what Shannon mentioned. Right, it's not a tick the box exercise. It should be, we strongly believe that it should be an integral part of our daily work, and this is what we are also trying to pass in our collaboration with our counterparts, right, Ukrainian counterparts in our daily work, also to them. So, talking again about resilience, right? I mean, again, we have in the room really symbol of those resilience, women that really stepped up in this challenging time, and it's very, you know, what I wanted also perhaps to use the opportunity here just briefly to mention. Now that I'm on the ground, I really understand what that resilience means, right? Because coming from Italy, right? It's we perhaps just forgot about or we never even experienced, like in my case, right? What the real war means. When you cannot leave your country because you are serving your country in the civilian security sector and under the martial law, you cannot leave it. Where you have to, you know, you don't sleep over the night, right? And all the psychological burden that this war is bringing to your loved ones. You know, I mean, I think that there are many layers of that resistance. So as a professional, but also as mothers, that we have to recognize and also celebrate the importance of celebrating those in leadership position.
Thank you very much, Guri. It's actually three points that I think it's worth exploring, and we will open the floor, of course, to curious questions and comments in just a couple of minutes. But what you brought up is this sustainability, and this is what Shannon also very early on mentioned, that yes, we need to sustain the achievement, and how we can sustain that achievement. The second part, and I think that relates to everyone, is this whole of society, defense and resilience, and this is becoming a term that more and more is being applied in policy planning as well, and strategies. And the third one, the strategic communication part. And I think that is a very essential element, because how do you explain to a European, although now we European that is living in Portugal or even closer to the full-scale war, how do you explain what this war means? It's in so many fronts, and the battle is so complex that it is not how we understood it. It is very different paradigm. So how do you explain it, and how do you get the buy-in of the society? So interesting points. Before I open for questions, if I may bring back Sharon, I think some of these things that I mentioned, the communication and the whole society resilience relate to your work as well. What is next for the project? What are the next concrete steps that you're looking forward to?
Okay, so first of all, I want to connect to something that was said before regarding the community and conflict-related sexual violence, because in Israel it was not aimed only at soldiers, but also at civilian population. And there are arenas that it's aimed on civilian population. And the aim, the uniqueness of CRSV is that it aims not only the individual, but also the community. It aims to instill fear and terror. And it's the sexual violence is a symbol of procreation and continuity of the society that is being attacked. And that's why, by the way, we see more and more crimes of sexual violence that are perpetrated outdoors and not indoors. And you mentioned before social media and technology, and progress brings to this that those who want to attack and to use sexual violence as a weapon of war will continue and use social media and technology to amplify the message for the society. So I think this is something that should be, I think, population and globally we should be prepared to prevent such a thing. We saw, by the way, on October 7th that things were uploaded to social media, Meta and X, and later on they were deleted. And I think also society in general has to be prepared for the fact that if things like this will happen, there'll be an immediate response to take it down. As for the project's next moves, our initial call was for Secretary General of the UN to include Hamas as an organization that uses sexual violence as a weapon of war, and it happened on August. And it's a very important decision, not just because it recognizes what happened and attributes it to Hamas, because it's a base for sanctions and steps from countries and organizations against Hamas. And I think it's a symbol, and it's what we want to achieve, because we believe that if sexual violence is being used as a weapon of war in arenas around the world, if you do not take actions and sanctions after the fact, then you do not create deterrence from forces that use sexual violence as a weapon of war. Because if a perpetrator knows that he can get away with it, and it's like I absurdly say it's the perfect crime, then why not keep using it? It's the cheapest weapon, and you can attack even the weakest of population. So we, first of all, want to call for sanctions regarding, of course, Hamas, but also organizations that use sexual violence as a weapon of war. And also we want to create protocols and guidelines for other countries on how to look at, to understand the phenomena, to understand how to, because some of the acts are not considered crimes. But unlike sexual violence, we know they are in the legal system, but there are acts that usually in society are not crimes, and in the context of weapon of war, it is a crime. And how to name the offenses. We want to think a little bit about changing the Rome Statute that considers sexual violence as crimes against humanity, but the definition is lacking some of the acts. And of course, bring protocols in order to try to help other arenas around the world.
Thank you for mentioning that last point, that this the success of this movement of changing the definitions and the legal principles would lead then to a proper prosecution of crimes in other regions and in other conflicts as well. And again, it seems that we are bringing back the point from Shannon on adversaries being really diligent in exploiting our vulnerabilities. So it is about prevention, preparedness, and then post-factum attribution and justice as well. Let's open to our excellent audience that, as I said, woke up early in the morning on Saturday to come and join us. If you have comments or questions, now is the time. Let's, and I am sorry if I don't see anybody. Yes, I see all of you. Eager hands raised. All right. Then I know that there were more notes being taken while we were talking. If any of our speakers would like to bring in a point and reiterate, Shannon, maybe? If you would like to bring a point as we were discussing to.
One observation that I would make as part of the preparedness and resilience piece of internal forces as well, and the building of our teams, we need to make sure that our people on the ground who are in defense and security are prepared for what they will see. So we can address the moral injury that might occur if they're not properly prepared. So the training and education that our people receive on such issues, WPS considerations, threats and risks therein. And it's also very important then that we adhere to law of armed conflict, rules of engagement, and in accordance with international human rights and international laws of armed conflict to ensure that we are in integrity, that we conduct ourselves with integrity. That's very important.
Thank you for bringing it up, and I did promise that the topic of training and education should be touched upon, not only from the early on stages, but also throughout the process, part of the preparedness. Major General, maybe we can start slowly moving towards the end of our session. What are the next steps in planning or in imagining even certain policies for really implementing WPS, institutionalizing it better, operationalizing it better in the Latvian armed forces?
Before I answer this question, I want to touch upon one point you asked, how to reach our societies everywhere in Europe. And I remember you in introduction said the motto about my Latvia, my responsibility. It's not about me. It's actually something about what we want to ask everyone in our society. It's like a call for action to assume these responsibilities. And I think this is something my encouragement doing the same in other societies, and encouraging, reminding, letting everyone to think about what could be you doing in such a scenarios, going through these scenarios. As Sharon mentioned, even psychological readiness and preparedness, that we are ready to face different threats and situations. But on what we're doing, it's definitely, we have plenty of ways to do. Even initially said that, of course, we still part of this, one of most traditional institutions in the world is an army with the traditions and very male dominated into the sense how we develop our structure and our force. But at the same time, listening to all what's happening here, I should admit, and we all recognize that armed forces is the one who is, through our activities, we are defending the freedoms of all, and what include also gender equality as our freedoms and our values. So that's why we have a big part in providing also security, and that will naturally come back to us. That also we in our organizational structure will have more equality in gender terms in both leadership, but also in overall as a structure. But still, I agree that, and I have it on my list, that we're now already working both with different our other ministries on the policy documentations, what we still need to impose as a policy, and that will bring also something about the training. We already have some trainings at different levels, frankly speaking with our people and communicating with them. It will take time, generations, but as I said, it starts all with recruitment. So probably also that's where we have to encourage and having these equalities already starting with the recruitment. So starting with our youth at schools and so on, how we promoting, what is opportunities in armed forces, what you can be doing. And that's where, as we discussed, this will widen up in saying this is not only a traditional role of leading men or women in troops in combat, but you can lead also autonomous systems in combat in future.
Absolutely, thank you for sharing, Shannon. If you would like to give one takeaway to our audience and participants today, that will motivate them and incentivize them as well to take action, what would that be?
Don't give up and create your networks. You're not alone. Everybody's working together. And I'd like to say especially thank you to the Major Generals for being here today. Sir, it's very important to have leadership in this space as well, particularly in defense. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Patricia, your takeaway?
Yeah, I wanted to say something related to strategic communication, and I was thinking that really gender mainstreaming need strategic communication, because some people think gender is now a fashion term to put in policy documents and not in this importance that my colleagues say about how to make from policy to practice. And it's really a necessity for peace and stability, but still not many people understand because this is not that easy. So I think we need to do an effort in this strategic communication for not only women, but more men to understand how important is it. And yes, that was my point.
Thank you very much. And Sharon?
First of all, I think that the word turning theory to practice is also important in my subject, because it's not enough to write about it and to talk about it and to bring up and build legal doctrine, but you have to use it. In our book, we're trying to bring practical solutions. So I think society should be prepared. I think society should stop talking and be more active, and not to be afraid to make a voice.
Thank you very much. Very powerful. And Gorica?
I will say that women are agents of resilience, and they are not passive beneficiaries of peacebuilding. And that recognizing and elevating their leadership is really essential for sustained security and recovery. So that will be from my side, yeah.
Thank you very much, Gorica. Thank you to all of you for taking the time and really sharing your expertise, but also your experiences, and giving some powerful points to all of us to think through. And I think that stop talking and start doing, but do not give up, and are some to take away. And also, yes, communicate with others and communicate so we can spread the understanding, and we can do more, indeed. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you one more time to all the panelists.
Thank you.